welcome to another edition of the AutoFocus show. The car I'm standing next to today is the Tata Motors Curvv SUV Coupe concept. This concept is a technology and design showcase, but the fact remains that this is going into production and you will be able to go into a Tata Motors dealership by 2024 and be able to shop for the final production version of this car. And going by Tata Motors' past and their cars and the concepts that they were based on, I can tell you that this is likely to be very close to the final production spec in terms of its overall looks. Yes, there are a few exaggerated lines. There are a few exaggerated features, including some of the air intake, vents and stuff like that, and these LED exaggerated lines. But this is a car that is likely to look very, very close to the final production spec. And that's something very exciting to look forward to. This is an elegant coupe form, as you can see, gives it a lot more character and exclusivity. And that's what Tata Motors is hoping will draw more buyers into the EV segment. Another unique feature, this car is going to be launched with an EV powertrain first, so electric first, and it's going to get internal combustion engines only later into its product cycle. The Curvv SUV Coupe concept that you're seeing is about 4.3 meters long. It is set to be positioned above the Nexon EV, which is the current most popular EV from the Tata portfolio. This will be positioned above the Nexon and it will be larger and offer much more range than the current vehicles. In fact, this is based on the same shared platform from Land Rover that has been used for building the Harrier and the Safari, but there have been changes and modifications that have been done for the Generation 2, as Tata Motors calls it, Generation 2 electric vehicles that are due to come out in the future. Tata Motors, of course, is very ambitious. They've talked about 10 electric vehicles to come in the next 5 years as part of their portfolio. And this one will be positioned in the mid SUV segment with a larger driving range, which could be as much as 400 to 500 kilometers per charge. There's more in the Gen 2 vehicles. There's more to come in terms of the charge infrastructure, charging capability built into the vehicle. It's going to be capable of much faster charging rates, and there's going to be other upgrades like OTA updates, car-to-car charging, and car-to-load charging, which means that if you have another vehicle from Tata Motors and you have a lower charge in the other vehicle, you can quite literally transfer charge from this one to the other vehicle. Similarly, if you're going to go backpacking or tenting, you can actually use charge from the car to power a small refrigerator or some electrical fittings inside the tent, stuff like that. And all of this is going to be possible in the Generation 2 set of vehicles that are due to come. The Curvv concept is a progression over Tata Motors' design of the past. It is still having a lot of Tata Motors design signatures. All of the surfacing, the layering, the chisel parts, the nose in the front and the rear, as you can see, lots of very familiar lines that trace back to some of the vehicles of Tata Motors that we already have in the market. The Tata Punch, the most recent launch, of course, is a classic example, but there is still a progression in the design where some of the previous elements have been reinterpreted, like the tri-arrow design has been reinterpreted, and there are pointers to the design, including these lines that have been used and these triangular elements and the rear fender, and similar elements that you can see both in the front and the rear, and of course some of these parallel lines that you see that also reflect on the tires and the alloy wheels. There's a lot of design familiarity, and at the same time, this is a progress over what we've seen in the past. This is also going to be a car that is going to appeal to a younger audience. It is a car that has been designed to offer exclusivity and a sort of uniqueness to buyers in this SUV space, but who have a younger attitude and want a car that delivers that bit of difference between what the neighbor has and what they should be owning. Right, so I like the exterior design and some of the exaggerated lines and features in the exterior of the car. There is similar exaggerations inside the cabin, but it's very easy to forget that this is a concept when you look at some of the individual elements inside the cabin. I mean, the touchscreen on the dash and the instrument cluster also being digital and a very futuristic sort of steering wheel. This car is focused on minimalism and the future. If we are going to go EV, of course, a lot of the design is going to be minimalist, simple lines, and at the same time delivering a very elegant message. That's what this attempts to do. The cabin is very, what looks like it's very executable in terms of the way it is laid out, and much of the features in the cabin can potentially make it to the production version in a more simplified form, of course. And the idea going forward for Tata Motors seems to be to deliver the eco-friendly message, not just in the form of having an electric powertrain, but also by using sustainable materials in the cabin, and a lot more is due to come. For more about the genesis of the Curvv concept and the future in terms of design, I would urge you to look at the video interview that we've had with head of Tata Motors Design, Martin Ulrich.
Oh, I think as you said, it's a coupe design, but we're putting it on an SUV. And as you know, SUVs are the core of our portfolio. So whether it's from the Safari to the Punch, it's really now a pretty comprehensive range. And we were looking at how to expand that, and we saw that there's an opportunity, because it's an EV first, that it has a real sort of dynamic driving experience. So we thought actually a coupe with that driving experience is a new territory. And as you said, we've seen this sort of typology, this coupe SUV in other markets. But I think, now you'll see in India that market expanding. This is a white space product for India, but at the same time, it has huge potential, and I think it'll really resonate well. Yeah, so as you said, there are echoes of a lot of our other products, hints of how, when this sits in a showroom, it'll look like definitely its own unique character, but at the same time, it's part of a family. You mentioned the tri-arrow. In many ways, we do have the tri-arrow. It's actually now a graphic, on the front and the rear. At the same time, this fender language is actually the same as on the Punch, but now with this accent and so forth. So again, like you said, there are hints of everything. There's a little bit of family resemblance, like when you see a family portrait, you'll see that there are, oh, he's got, his mother's, characteristics and so forth. So that's it. But at the same time, design is always pushing the envelope and always looking forward. So because this is our newest design, it is the most modern right now in the portfolio. And its job is now to really communicate also that transition from ICE to EV. And also, what does that mean? It's not just a powertrain, but it's actually a vocabulary. Actually, we are just finishing and we're developing the production vehicle. We had it in our studio 2 weeks ago, this car and the production vehicle, full size next to each other. The fidelity and the gap is extremely small. I mean, we've always challenged ourselves to deliver the promise of our concepts into production, and I think our track record is pretty good, and now this one is even getting better. So you'll see pretty much what you see here in production. Yeah, what you mentioned, aerodynamics, and that was actually one of the key themes of this design. Because we decided to do it as an EV first, as you said, there's always this anxiety about range, and efficiency is really the word that you want to communicate, both from a visual point of view and actual factual, from an aerodynamic point of view. So this car underwent a lot of aerodynamic testing, both in CFD and in full-size wind tunnels, and it influenced the design. So there's a number of features on it which are actually aerodynamic, and we're influenced by actually testing it and validating it and putting those ideas into the design.